Welcome to The Explainer. So, if you're a med student, you already know this, but understanding the heart's conduction system, it's not optional, it is absolutely foundational. Today, we're going to build a really clear mental model of this electrical network, the very system that lets the heart create its own beat, all by itself.
Okay, let's kick things off with a classic question, one that really gets to the heart of the matter, no pun intended. How is it possible that a heart can keep beating even outside the body? You know, if you give it the right mix of salts and oxygen, it just keeps going. What's up with that?
Well, that incredible feat is all thanks to something called the heart's intrinsic conduction system. And look, for anyone going into medicine, getting this system down cold isn't just about passing your exams. No way. This is the key to everything. Diagnosing arrhythmias, actually understanding an EKG, and knowing how cardiac drugs do what they do. All right, here's the first huge concept to lock in. The cells running this whole show, they are not nerve cells. Let me repeat that. They're not neurons. They're actually specialized, kind of pimped up heart muscle cells, cardiomyocytes. They've basically traded some of their squeezing power for a souped-up ability to create and send electrical signals. The key takeaway? The heart makes its own rhythm. Okay, so let's get into the anatomy. Think of this like a roadmap. We're going to trace the exact, unchangeable path that the electrical signal takes every single time the heart beats. So this journey is a super strict one-way street. It goes through these 5 key spots. It starts in the pacemaker, gets held up for a second at a crucial checkpoint, and then zips down an electrical superhighway. Let's follow it, starting right at the beginning. Everything kicks off right here, at the sinoatrial node, or the SA node for short. This is the heart's natural pacemaker, plain and simple. It's just this tiny little bunch of cells in the wall of the right atrium, and its job is to spontaneously fire off the electrical signal that sets the pace for the entire heart, usually somewhere between 60 and 100 times a minute. Okay, so once the SA node fires, that electrical wave, that depolarization just spreads out across the muscle of both atria, making them contract. And all that electrical energy funnels down to our second stop, the atrioventricular node, the AV node, and it sits right on the border, right between the atria and the ventricles. In this spot, this border is incredibly important. You have to understand that the heart is built with a wall, a real electrical barrier between the top chambers, the atria, and the bottom chambers, the ventricles. The signal can't just leak through wherever it wants, no exceptions. This barrier has a name. It's called the cardiac skeleton. It's basically a framework of connective tissue that acts as an insulator. And this is so important because it makes sure the atria get to finish squeezing all their blood down before the ventricles start their big squeeze. It prevents total chaos. The AV node, it's the only way through. It's the bouncer at the door. So once the signal gets past that checkpoint, the AV node, it hits an electrical superhighway. It just shoots down the bundle of His, which is in that wall between the ventricles. Then it splits into a left and a right bundle branch, and finally fans out into these things called Purkinje fibers. These fibers dive deep into the ventricular walls and deliver that contract now signal to pretty much the whole muscle all at once.
Okay, so we've got the map, right? We know the where. Now let's zoom way in, down to the cellular level, and figure out the how. How in the world does one single cell just create its own beat over and over and over again?
You know, regular nerve cells or muscle cells, they just sit around waiting for orders. But not these pacemaker cells. Nope. They have this amazing ability called automaticity. They just go on their own. So what's the secret? What's happening with their ion channels that lets them pull this off?
The whole secret sauce is something called the pacemaker potential. See, after a beat, the cell doesn't just chill out at a stable resting state. Instead, it immediately starts to slowly, spontaneously drift back up towards the firing threshold. It's like a clock that winds itself. It's designed to go off again.
Let's walk through this cycle. It's basically a 4-step dance. Step 1, it starts with something called the funny current. Seriously, that's its name. It's this slow leak of sodium ions into the cell that starts nudging that charge upwards. Then step 2, once it hits that magic threshold number, bam! Calcium channels fly open and calcium rushes in, causing the big spike of the action potential. And notice what I said there. It's calcium, not sodium like in a neuron, that causes the big spike. Super important clinical point. Okay, step 3, we gotta reset. So potassium channels open up, potassium rushes out, and the charge drops back down. And that leads right into step 4. As soon as the cell gets back down, that very drop triggers the funny current to start all over again. And the whole cycle repeats. It's beautiful.
Okay, so now we have the map, the anatomy. And we have the spark, the cell biology. But let's ask the big question. Why? Why is the system built this way? Well, it all comes down to one thing: creating the most efficient pump imaginable.
That whole superhighway we talked about, the bundle branches, the Purkinje fibers, it has one mission: get the electrical signal to the bottom, the very tip of the heart, as fast as humanly possible. The whole point is to tell the bottom of the ventricles to go before anything else.
And why do that? Because by lighting the fire at the bottom first, the actual wave of muscle contraction, the big squeeze, can start at the bottom and move upwards towards the top, or the base. And what's at the base? The exits, the aorta and the pulmonary artery.
It's such a brilliant design. The best analogy is squeezing a tube of toothpaste. You always squeeze from the bottom, right? It's the most efficient way to get everything out. It's the exact same principle here. The electricity races to the bottom so the muscle can squeeze from the bottom up. Perfect.
All right, so the heart has its own beat, its own internal clock. But it can't just be doing its own thing all the time, right? It has to respond to what the body needs. It needs to slow down when we're resting and speed way up when we're running from a bear or for the bus. And that's where the autonomic nervous system steps in to take control.
So to really get how the nervous system controls things, let's think about the heart's factory settings. If you could just completely disconnect the heart from every nerve and let the SA node do its thing, it would beat at its own intrinsic rate, which is actually about 100 to 110 beats per minute.
So wait a minute. If that's the case, why is your resting heart rate not over 100? Why is it more like 60 or 70? Well, it's because when you're just sitting here, the parasympathetic nervous system is constantly quietly putting the brakes on. It's always active, keeping your heart rate nice and efficient.
So you've got these two opposing forces, like a gas pedal and a brake. The sympathetic system, that's your accelerator. It squirts out noradrenaline, hits those beta-1 receptors, and tells the heart, faster, faster. The parasympathetic system is the brake. It uses acetylcholine on muscarinic receptors to say, whoa, slow down. And right there, that's a huge pharmacology lesson. Beta blockers, they literally work by blocking that gas pedal.
And how does this all work? Well, it all comes back to those ion channels we talked about. The sympathetic system, the gas pedal, basically makes that pacemaker potential slope way steeper. You get to the firing threshold much faster. The parasympathetic system, the brake, does the opposite. It actually makes the cell even more negative to start with, so it has a longer way to go to reach the threshold. It's just a beautiful, elegant way to control the speed.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, what is it? It's that mastering this system, the anatomy, the electricity, the controls, it's not just another topic. It's the absolute non-negotiable foundation for so much of what you're going to do. This is how you'll make sense of arrhythmias, this is how you'll confidently read an EKG, and it's how you'll know exactly why you're giving a certain cardiac drug. For any med student out there, your road into clinical cardiology, it starts right here.